When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evils against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecute the prophets who were before you."
What thoughts run through your mind? What feelings run through you when you hear of someone's death? We had those feelings roused up in us just recently with the death of Bill and the death of Patty, and recently with the death of Priscilla. And these feelings are often a sense of questioning about death. What is death? Why death? We come up with questions perhaps right away where we want to know what happened. How did it happen? Was it expected? Was it something that the person was ill, or was it sudden or unexpected? We have all kinds of reactions to it, and probably we have a sense of fear and awe and dread at the same time about what this experience is about. For many of us who experience death personally, it is a deep wound. It is a disturbing moment in time. The earth beneath us, the foundations that we stand on are shattered and moved. Because death is something that is perhaps the greatest question that we confront. It is the biggest mystery, and for many of us, it is the biggest fear. Death is something that is, by its nature, unknowable. And so when someone dies, we have all kinds of reactions. Some of us may push it away because it's too much for us to deal with. Maybe it's too close, and it brings our own death into light. And when that happens, we want to push it away. We want to forget it. But death is indeed part of life. It is the ebb and flow of everything that comes into being and goes out to being into the greater, larger good from which we all come. And today we're celebrating All Saints. All Saints is an opportunity for us to look at the saints and of the church who have done something in the midst of their life in confrontation with death, and have been able to do something that strikes us, that moves us, that awakens us, that deepens our appreciation and love for life and God. And so the church, in its wisdom, wants to uphold them as models. And so we have Mark, we have Luke, we have Timothy, we have Philemon, we have all kinds of saints that we look to as models. People who lived in the same kind of world that you and I lived, people who struggle with the same issues that you and I struggle with, the same fears that we have, and the same limitations. And somehow they persevere. Somehow they shine. Somehow they're able to overcome the circumstances of their life and bring into the world a light that is beautiful and brilliant and has blessed others. Similarly, we also celebrate All Souls Day, which you want to try to include in today's service, because All Souls is the life of everyone that we know. All the people in front of these pictures that we have, all the people that you know that have passed away, all your friends, family, sisters and brothers, people who have died, but somehow after their death, we may get who they are for the first time. And this is what's interesting, because when someone dies, at first, you're not sure about what you think of their death. You start to look at their life. You start to see the struggles that they've been through. You try to find the good things that they did. You try to dismiss some of the errors that they made. But you may have regrets as well. Regrets that you didn't spend much time with that person. Regrets that you didn't tell the person, "I love you," enough. Regrets perhaps that you weren't able to appreciate what the person was standing and struggling for. And so we fill ourselves with these regrets because we are confronting ourselves with the end. And for many people, the end sometimes informs the beginning and the middle. The end in itself becomes the mirror through which we reevaluate our lives, through which we evaluate and reevaluate our relationships. And so the death of our friends and the death of our families are an awakening experience. And it's a wonderful thing that the church brings it into celebration, that the church wants us to remember all of these people who have passed in our lives, have been saints in our lives, have been heroes and heroines in our lives, and have taught us how to be courageous in times when we feel that we can never be courageous, how to believe in the moments in which we less believe, how to trust in God and life when we feel most vulnerable and separated from truth. So today we celebrate all our brothers and sisters who have gone before us and who, according to the teachings of our scriptures, are now in the presence of God, celebrating and rejoicing in the fact that they are still part of this network of being and life that God has prepared us to be part of. But for us who are here, what do we do with this reality that comes and goes? We're now confronted in November. Now we're entering into the winters. The nights are going to be longer. We start to feel as though something is missing, something is dissipating. We feel the darkness coming into our lives. And for some people who suffer from the lack of light, go into a depression. It is a natural cycle for us to go into the dark before we can appreciate and move back into the light. And so it's a whole cycle that we're part of right now. And what we do with this time is important, because for many of us, we have to hold an example before our eyes so that we can continue the struggle forward in the midst of not knowing what's going to happen. We need heroes. We need saints. But we need people like you, people that are ordinary, people who know how to be kind, people who know how to love, people who know how to take care of each other, people who extend a hand to help. This is what we learn. And I was wondering, how in the world am I going to talk about All Saints and All Souls Day with the Gospel of Matthew? And it's because I bet you that every time we look at one saint in our history, or we look at somebody in our life that has died, that we remember them with great respect and real appreciation, is that they have lived the kingdom that Jesus is speaking today. They have had the life way in their soul, in their life, that they have lived out, and that has been resonated with what Jesus is talking about today. Blessed are the poor, for they shall be taken care of. Blessed are those who fight for justice, for they will see God. Blessed are those who hunger for truth. In other words, the gospel that we read today is the vision that Jesus gives us as the means by which to live our life. And when we look at the people who have gone before us and have died, they have made some resonance to what we've been reading in the gospel. They have shined in some way. They have lifted up the words that Jesus is teaching us today in this gospel. They have been peacemakers. They have been justice seekers. They have been caring, loving people. They have been poor, and yet they have been generous. They have been sick, and yet they have been strong. They have been alone, and yet they have reached out to people. This is why the gospel today is for this particular holiday. You try to figure it out, right? What does it mean? The Beatitudes. The Beatitudes are a mandate for us to consider, a mandate for us to see the vision of God and the vision of Jesus when he first began his ministry. As you know, Jesus began his ministry and he started already healing people. And then he goes on to the mount and he begins to speak to them. He begins to tell them what this kingdom should be, what the world can possibly be, where people are respected for who they are, where no one goes hungry, where the world is full of joy and peace. Isn't that a wonderful vision? Isn't that something that we could achieve? Isn't that something that we all want to share and be part of? But the truth is that we are negligent. We're afraid of death, and so we're so consumed with ourselves. We're so concerned about our feelings and about our own insecurities that we don't see the larger picture that will allow us to be part of a greater strength and confidence. So Jesus tells us what to do. Jesus tells us, this is what I want as a kingdom. This is what I want you to do. Take care of the poor, feed the hungry, liberate the oppressed, Love the orphan and go visit the people in prison. Do this, and you will bring a certain joy and a certain life into their existence, that you are doing the work of the kingdom. But let me remind you, let me go back to the obvious of death. Many people don't like talking about it. My God, on a Sunday when you come to church to hear about death, that's not a very nice thing, is it? But if anything is true, death is. If anything is inevitable, death is. We all know it. We all will confront it. We live in a dream. A dream. We think we will never awaken from that dream, that death will never come and touch us. But it does. We see it all around. So what does it do? What could death really do to help us, even instead of terrorizing us? Death can awaken us to the moment. Death can awaken us to the now. Death can awaken us to the real, to what is actually happening in our environment, what's happening in our family. Just think for a moment, if you were aware that your time was only limited to a few more days, what would you do? What if you had just a few days? What would the first thing you do? You're not going to go to an office. You're not going to sit there and do work. Would you travel? Would you call all your people and tell you, look, forgive me? 3 particular statements that are said when someone is dying. I love you. Forgive me. Thank you. That's what you want to tell people who may not hear you. And then they're on the last breath. Thank you. Forgive me. I love you. Because these are the things that we need most in our lives. These are the things that we need in order to be regrounded and feel alive. But we're so afraid of sharing it. But in the light of gospel, in the light of the Beatitudes, and in the light of the reality of our time on this earth, what will emphasize the importance? This is what's happening today as we celebrate the lives of those we love, the people that we love. I lost my mom about 10 years ago. I can't even believe it's 10 years already. When I went to New York and I stayed with her for 11 days, and when she died, I couldn't get her out of my mind. I still can't. Because I know now who she was. I didn't know then. I was so busy with my own life. I was so busy with my own struggles. Now I see her for the gentle, humble, funny, caring, wise woman that she has been. And I miss her terribly. And what do I do now? I long and I wonder, was I good enough? Did I share it enough? Did I care enough for her? Did I take the time to let her know that she was important to me? When will we do it? When will we live on that level? When will we act on that level? What will it take for us to break out of our self-contained, protected environment and step out into the world with courage to be and with the strength to love? And we need this more than ever. Everybody's afraid, especially in the next couple of days. Everybody's fearful of the outcome. We're so afraid some people are going to lock up their stores, they're going to lock up their doors, stay inside, not do anything. They're fearful because they have no love in their life, because they don't have the freedom of love that Jesus tells us today he asks and expects of his people in the kingdom. It's kind of weird. I was trying to figure out exactly how do I go through the sermon, because it could be a downer. No one likes to talk about death. But let me tell you, if you confront death, if you are okay with death in your life, if you feel that your life has been consummated, if you feel that you have completed the tasks in your life, then death is no barrier, because you are free indeed. But if you feel there's much to do before death, many people to engage before death, then get working. If there are many things that you need to accomplish, new wines to taste, new visions to look at, new friendships to do, new activities, do them now. The permission has been given to us because God said, when you die, you come to me and we are all together. That's the gift that he gives us. He lifts the burden of death away from us and he sets us free to live, but to live in love, to live in justice, to live in goodness and care. Not private lives, not self-consumed lives, not worried lives about bank accounts, but lives of service, or lives of love, lives of freedom. We need that in this world. It's been lost and it's been hidden too long. So, All Saints' Day, people that have modeled wonderful things for us. Good courage, incredible love. And then these wonderful people here and everyone that you know. Think about them. Think about what they've done. Think about what they stood for. Think about what they've given. Look what they expired for. And awaken. Many of us are in slumber in our lives. We walk sightless among miracles and we see not. So yes, death has to be the awakener. And the only one that could really do that is death itself. It awakens us not to death, but to life. They are the same. Someday you'll get that. Someday you'll get that life and death are the same. It's just a transition from one point to the other, and you move into greater being. You're limited right now because we're in tiny little bodies with little brains. And all we know is what we see around us. But death is the great liberator in which we become part of the immense, developing, emerging, creative love of God throughout the world. This is, do not fear. We hear it all the time in the Bible. Do not fear, do not fear. Do not be caught up in the fear of death, but listen to death to wake you up, to set you free. And do it as Jesus is inviting us. Be peacemakers. Love justice. Take care of your neighbor. Feed the poor. Feed the hungry. Visit the imprisoned. Visit the sick. Do it. And you'll see what he means. Amen.